I spent 2 years at Binghamton University, where I quickly made some great friends and used to hang out with them every weekend. On a Friday night back in October, my group had no big plans, so we decided to hang out at the school nature preserve by the lake. We found a small clearing at the far end of the lake, which was perfect for having a fire since it was out of the way from campus security. People would sometimes come here, but not often, to smoke weed, drink, and do all the other drugs. This place was a bit of a mystery to most people on campus, and that's what we love about it. We brought some beers and lit a fire, and we just hung out and had what we called a brochette. As the night went on, time seemed to fly by faster and faster as the alcohol started to kick in. Eventually, we were all so into it that one of our two friends ended up on the floor, rolling around in the leaves. At this point, my other friend stops laughing and walks away. We all perk up and listen to the rustling of leaves and twigs in the distance. We throw our bottles into the lake since we're all over 21, and it's not unheard of for campus cops to come through the woods on the weekends to grab kids who are doing drugs. We stuffed the rest of our beers in our backpacks. I was a bit tipsy, so my paranoia was at an all-time high. I think that was true for everyone since the fire made us vulnerable to anyone coming through the woods. But the thing is, this place was so remote and far away from campus that it was hard to find anyone. It was like only one person could be heard in the distance. And when a tree branch snapped not too far away, it scared us all. None of us were the confrontational type, so we didn't have the confidence to shout out to whoever was out there. Instead, we just sat there quietly, shushing each other. We heard what appeared to be someone or something circling us, or walking in a circle around our campsite. It was almost as if we were in the movie The Blair Witch Project, as the sounds of cracking tree branches and crunching leaves echoed back to our campsite. At first, we laughed about it, but I quickly became concerned about who or what it could be. Out of nowhere, all three of us jumped. At first, I didn't understand what had happened, but then I saw what had caused the sound. It took me a few seconds to realize that a branch had been hurled into the center of our fireside. One of my two friends ran off, while the other friend and I were looking at each other, half laughing and half concerned. At this point, it was unclear if it was a joke or not. However, my friend was hit in the face with a tree branch, causing him to cry out in pain. I quickly grabbed my backpack and helped my friend to his feet. Then we began to run back towards our dorm. When we reached the road separating the nature preserve and our dorm, we paused to take a deep breath. However, it soon became apparent that someone was following us, as we heard footsteps approaching the road. We kept running back to our dorm, and when we arrived, our other friend was already in his room. We looked out of the window and saw someone pacing in the woods, and each time a car drove by, they would return to the woods. Eventually, the person disappeared into the woods, never to be seen again. I went to school at one of the most well-known universities in the state of Illinois. I won't name the university, because I'm not getting paid to advertise it, but let's just say that it was a great school to go to. I studied computer science, which was my major at the time. If I recall correctly, this was my second semester in college in the fall of 2012. Computer science isn't an easy major to master, and if you want to be successful in the field, you need to have a good understanding of what you're doing. To make a long story short, even though it was difficult, I still loved it. My major made me take some really tough tests that were really important for my grade, so I had to stay in my dorm all the time studying. All my friends were away at frat parties, so I'd stay in my room, studying as much as I could. But there was one night in particular that I'll never forget. If I remember correctly, it was during the week, and I was at my dorm doing my usual late-night study routine. I hid my books for a couple of hours until around 1 a.m., when I decided to call it a night. At some point, I got a strange feeling that I was alone in the dorm. Remember, I'm very comfortable when it comes to my dorms, so this feeling was strange. I was too tired to care, and I was trying to get some sleep when I heard the closet door creak a bit. The closet was an old one, so I didn't think much of it at first. I brushed it off as the ventilation system, but then I heard what I thought was faint breathing coming out of the closet. At that moment, I knew that my mind wasn't playing tricks on me, and I had seen too many horror films to ignore it. I whip out my phone, turn on the flashlight, and point it at the closet. There was a guy about 6 feet tall, dressed in dirty clothes, staring at me. I freaked out and ran out of the dorms as fast as I could. Luckily, campus security was there to help me out. I was standing in the hallway and I saw an officer coming back into my dorm with a skinny, messy-looking guy. He wasn't trying to run away. He just seemed to accept what was happening. It wasn't long before the police showed up and took him away. They usually take their jobs very seriously here. It turns out the guy was homeless and had sneaked into the building through an open back door. He said he needed some warmth since it was freezing outside. He ended up going to jail, but I still felt a bit of compassion for him. Temperatures usually drop to the 30s at this time of year, so I can imagine how he must have felt. I stayed in the dorm for 2 weeks after that before transferring to a new dorm on the floor below me. I don't know why he left the back door open, but I think it was probably because he was careless. That's my story, and while I know he didn't mean to hurt me, it still scares me. Three years ago, I graduated from college as a woman. I went to a small university for my undergraduate degree. During my first year at that university, I was living on campus in a dorm building. I could walk to my classes and back because the floor of the dorm I was living on was an all-women floor that was the third floor. I remember being in my dorm room after my first day of classes, and it was around 11 p.m. I had the whole room to myself, so I fell asleep pretty quickly. I woke up in the middle of the night to someone knocking on my door. I was really tired, and it was still dark outside, so I rubbed my eyes and looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m., and there was another knock on the door. I don't know why someone would be knocking on my door so early, so I didn't answer. After a while, it stopped, but then I heard something like a man laughing. I couldn't make out what it was, but it sounded like it was coming from an older person. Finally, I heard footsteps coming from the other direction, and I didn't hear the laughing anymore. I wasn't sleepy anymore, so I got up and peeked out the peephole. There was no one there, so I opened the door and looked down the hallway. At the end, I saw what looked like a man walking down the hallway towards the stairs. He was probably around college age, so I shut the door and shut it again as soon as I saw him. I made sure the door was locked and went to bed. The next day was a regular day of classes for me, which I wasn't too excited about, but I needed one, and it was available at night. The class ran from 7 to 8, and I went there that night. There were only 15 other kids in the class, so I sat at the back of the room with my laptop to take notes. I was sitting in the back row of the classroom, taking notes on a laptop and listening to the professor. I happened to glance at the back door, which was right behind me. As I did, I saw someone looking in, an older guy with a creepy smile. He was staring at me for about 5 seconds before ducking down the stairs. I looked back at the window a few times, but he wasn't coming back. When class was over, I packed up my laptop and headed back to my dorm. It was about 10 minutes across campus. It was dark outside, and the campus was pretty quiet, so I was walking back on the sidewalk when I heard footsteps behind me. I didn't think much of it until I heard them getting closer and closer. I knew I was walking slowly, so I turned around and saw the same guy I had seen in class. He was looking at me, and when I saw him, he started to smile again. Then he started to laugh, and I knew it was the same guy who had knocked on my door last night. I started to walk faster, but he ran away. I then ran to try to get away from him. I ran off the sidewalk and into the road that the man was following. The road was quiet at that time of night, but I could see in the distance a campus safety vehicle parked on the road. I ran straight towards it, and as I got closer, it noticed me. This is when the man noticed me too. He stopped chasing me and started running in a different direction. When I got to the campus safety call, I told the officer what happened. The man had pretty much gotten away by then. The officer radioed the police and the other campus safety officers. I then returned to my dormitory. I was scared for a few days, but fortunately, I never saw him again.